Hello everyone, I'm State Senator Judy Schwank, 11th District of Pennsylvania, and I'm here with an old friend, Dr. Kathy Metrick. Kathy was the former superintendent of Kutztown School District when we first became friends, and now is the founder of Kutztown Strong. And that's what our topic is today, talking about a wonderful organization that organically grew out of a problem that was occurring in Northeast Berks. And so I'll turn it over to you, Kathy, to talk a little bit about, our history, how we got started on this. It's a pretty fascinating story.
It is. We were talking about this earlier, and when we started this we first met in March of 2014 to figure out what to do about this problem. And I was working on something with Kutztown Area School District. Andrew Pottiger was working on something with Brandywine Heights Area School District, and you brought us together. Mm-hmm. And having that synergy was so helpful because we were able to plan together and figure out what to do. And we both put out a call to action to our communities in April of 2014, and that was the kickstart of Kutztown Strong and the task force at Brandywine, and it has made such a difference. Unfortunately, we were given just a really sad opportunity, and shame on us if we didn't do something with it. So that's why we acted on it. We had lost recent graduates over the past few years prior to that because of substance misuse, and we were tired of losing people we cared about, and we didn't want to go through this anymore. So we called the communities together, and the response was overwhelming, and you were there from the very first meeting, and we were talking about the fact that first meeting was not what we had expected. We got caught in the middle of a blizzard.
Right.
We had a medical emergency. People showed up whom we didn't know, but everybody contributed and got us to where we needed to be to get this started, and the communities ran with it. They cared, and they wanted to be part of a solution.
So some of the folks that are watching us and listening to our conversation today probably remember back in 2014 when the opioid crisis really just blew up in Berks County, and maybe it was beneficial, I'm not so sure, but that the fact that it started where we noticed it in a rural community, mm-hmm. in the furthest reaches of our county, that it wasn't just an urban problem, that was just an issue in the city or in the very close suburbs, that it was something that could be happening in little country towns as well, mm-hmm. I think was so important. And the fact that you as a superintendent and Mr. Pottiger responded so quickly. What was going through your mind as to what are we going to do about this, and why did it happen here?
Well, it was a real learning experience because depending on the people around us to provide information, the district attorney's office was phenomenally helpful. Pat Liberace with his information about that corridor along which drugs tended to be transported, and the fact that we were right there and just ripe low-hanging fruit for the people who were distributing drugs. We hadn't seen ourselves that way. It was a new way to see ourselves, but as a superintendent of a school district with that kind of community tragedy facing us, we couldn't do something about it just as a school. It was bigger than a school. It was bigger than the district. It was bigger than the immediate community. It embraced the entire area community. And we needed to bring everyone together. And yet, who in a small town like that has access to a venue as well as the communication to pull everybody together? So it seemed, it behooved us to take action. And we could not be the ones to control and solve the problem by ourselves. We needed everyone, and thankfully everyone came together.
Right. I remember at one of our first meetings after this problem blew up was with the Council on Chemical Abuse.
Yes.
There were representatives from there, and they were very, very helpful, mm-hmm. In terms of organizing Kutztown Strong. And I think it points out the fact how important schools are in our communities. They're the convener, maybe even more than local government. It's the school that unites everybody, and where, you know, we know our children are engaged, we understand, you know, how important it is in terms of family life. Everything revolves around the school, right?
Absolutely.
To a large extent.
Absolutely. And part of that is because we have the facility in which to hold meetings and pull people together.
Right.
But part of it is that whole communication aspect. We have methods through which to reach out to a good part of the community. And thankfully, all of our business people and the university were so helpful in getting the word out. And we made sure at that first meeting that we had representation from the medical community, the ministerium,
Right.
Businesses, students, families. Every aspect of community was represented. And thankfully you and some of our other legislators were supportive of this process, but you really helped us plan it and kick it off. And I think that carried a lot of clout and made a big difference.
Well, again, you organized, you were able to get, you know, the key players in the community, faith-based community, the parents, of course, the business community, so that everybody understood right from the get-go, this is our problem and it is our issue to try to resolve. So that was sort of the beginnings of Kutztown Strong. What were your goals right from the beginning in terms of what this organization would do?
The presentation that we had held prior to this, the last one we had held where we tried to educate parents about drug use and so forth.
Right.
It had been well advertised and 5 people came. And that was our fear. So one of our first priorities was to get people there, to bring people. And I have to say, for Kutztown area to have over 200 people show up for that meeting was a statement.
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest impact on me was that not a single person there said, what are you going to do about it and what have you done wrong so far? Every single person said, how can I help? And that was, even if we couldn't have articulated that ahead of time as our priority, but that needed to be the focus. And we had people on action committees from all aspects of the community, and we had student representation, because in the beginning we started with the adults and we had students saying, you're doing this for the students, right? Mm-hmm. How about if we come? And
that was smart.
It was wonderful. And their voices were so important, because we would talk about the things that we thought the students should want to do. But the students said, well, you could ask us and we'll tell you what we really want to do. And that, of course, made it much more effective.
You know, it's so interesting. I've thought about this a lot. The fact that the university, we're speaking about, of course, Kutztown University, also became engaged in this. And it's a huge presence in that northeastern corner of the county.
Yes.
It's, you know, it certainly brings a lot of people in. It's an educational resource. They stepped right up to the plate in understanding that they possibly were seeing some of the same problems, and that it's not, they're not an island unto themselves. They are part of the community as well. I thought that was so, you know, interesting that occurred that way.
Oh, yes. And they have held so many different roles with us. We had one fraternity that adopted us immediately, and they became very active in any activities that we held for our students. They were present. They helped to organize. If it were a sporting event, they were the referees. And they made a real effort to be good role models for our students. They were the college students saying, you know, we're cool college students and we can do things like this that are good for the community and good for keeping young people safe. Then we had a sorority that also adopted us to help organize and work with the students primarily at the middle school on different activities and so forth. And that was great. The social work department, they helped us create surveys. We get interns every year. From the university, we don't have money to pay personnel, but we get interns, and they have done so much for us as far as the statistical analysis of our data, and putting out the surveys, like I said, but just working with us and what is appropriate in a social work environment versus what is normally seen as everyday practice in a public school environment.
Everybody should know that at Kutztown they have a very strong social work educational program. It's a huge thrust there. Master's and doctorate is available there. So that's a true asset in our community as well.
And if I can add to that, our community organizer, Cheryl McElveen, actually, that's how we got her, because she was a student in the social work program and she is now going for her doctorate at Kutztown University. And the whole department works with us a lot of times on our projects because of her connection, which is invaluable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of the things that the connections of Kutztown Strong, you'd have to say, are invaluable. That has been the strength of the organization. So what are some typical activities that Kutztown Strong would have? Then we'll move into where we're going from here.
Well, normally, before the pandemic, Kutztown Strong would run a lot of activities for our students, and it all came out of the student group meeting and making the suggestions at the high school level as far as what they wanted to do, whether it was volleyball tournaments, dodgeball tournaments, movies in the park. That was very cool. We never would have thought of that. The students came up with that. Flag football in the dark with those glow-in-the-dark necklaces, so you could tell which team you were on. All sorts of different activities for half days when students go home partway through the day for professional development for teachers, and there was really nothing for them to do. So on those half days, the university would provide us space. It was kind of cool for the kids to get to go hang out at the college, and we would set up different games and things like that for them to do. Oasis is a very active program run by the faith-based community for our middle school students to participate in after school several days a week, and it gives parents a lot of comfort that they have a positively engaging place to go. Lots of different activities for the students, but the neatest one to me was Kutztown, the Cougar Chronicle, which the high school students would work with their English teacher, the middle school students would work with their art teacher, and together they would put together a newsletter 4 to 5 times a year that went to the elementary students. And it would have articles, contests, artwork, and so forth. And it was just full circle because it was our students leading our students, and it embraced everybody K through 12. So that was just a really nice representation of some of the activity and the student buy-in, because that buy-in perpetuated itself in having Kutztown Strong becoming a normal part of students' lexicon. And it was very normal to hear students say, well, Kutztown Strong this or that, or you need help, go to Kutztown Strong. And that was such positive feedback for us.
It's made a difference in students' lives for sure. So where does the organization go from here? What are your plans, going into the future?
Well, right now, of course, with the pandemic, it is challenging, but because of what happened today,
kids are still in school.
Kids are still in school, and because of what happened today, between the funding that you were able to provide from the state and the funding that John Adams was able to provide from the district attorney's office, which is a beautiful irony if you think about that drug forfeiture money coming together with state discretionary funding to support students. It's a beautiful thing. And being able to launch communities in schools in the Kutztown Area School District, Brandywine Heights Area School District, and Fleetwood Area School District, all of our students will get the mental health and behavioral health services they need, which in a rural community is hard to access. So that's the next step for Kutztown Strong, is to embrace this wonderful opportunity we've been given across 3 school districts, not just Kutztown, and to be able to support our students and their families. And that is huge, because so often We all know when you're trying to work with a student and navigate difficult waters, you're really not working with just the student. They come with their family, but their family isn't represented. So this is an opportunity where we can bring peace and help and comfort to full families and get them the services they need. And that is our big next step, and we are so excited.
I am too, because again, this is about prevention. And we know, you don't have to be a social scientist to understand how critical mental health is and how pervasive mental health issues are in our community. And there are not enough resources to be able to address it. And we know also that if we're talking about very young people, our school students from as you said, K through 12, when problems first present themselves, if we can deal with them then.
Yes.
And the issues that, the baggage that they come with from their families and situations that we don't always see but are there and present themselves in these kids, we can make a huge difference.
Absolutely.
And the success of these kids. That's what excites me.
Oh my goodness, yes. And to have access to that right in the schools, it makes it so easy. One of the big challenges for parents in our areas, being out in the rural areas, if both parents work, which is very typical nowadays, if both parents work, it's very difficult to get students to activities, but also to access resources that they might need. And the statistic that I continue to find mind-blowing is that high incidence of depression that shows up in kids all through school, but that 50% of those students who express depression are apt to become substance misusers. And that is overwhelming, because then you're dealing with a much different problem, much larger, but much different problem. Whereas if we can intervene for those mental and behavioral health services earlier, we can prevent so much of that and keep them out of John Adams' district attorney's office, but also give them a much better life and their families. So many parents, what do I do with this child? He needs from me something that I cannot give. And for us to be able to help them get what they need as a family, we're increasing and improving the health of the whole unit.
And the other piece of this is then that it's not just that we think that we'll get results. Kutztown Strong quantifies. You make sure that you actually evaluate the success of the programs that you're doing. And that's how we know, whether to change direction or to focus on a particular effort. And that's so important.
Well, we're very lucky.
We want to do good work, but we need to be able to prove that we're doing good work, right?
Yes, and it's reaffirming. And the other thing is, too, it does help us make new decisions. Otherwise, it's easy to choose a path and just stay on it. But we are very lucky to have, the university, because they help us. So we do the state's Pennsylvania Youth Survey every other year. We got so much value out of that survey that the university helped us create our own survey to do on the off years. And that way, rather than getting half of the population in a 2-year period, we get the whole population. So that has been really, really helpful. The needs assessment that we did of all 3 school district communities, that was very eye-opening for all of us. So we have those data. So the PACE survey, the Kutztown University survey that we developed with Kutztown Strong to do for our school kids, and then the 3 school district area communities, all 3 of those are regular sources of data that we can analyze and say, oh, well, I guess we missed the boat on this one, we need to find something different, or wow, this has been powerful, what an impact we're having in this area. So it's great to have that feedback.
It's on so many levels. This is an organization to watch, because we're going to see success, and we're going to see in our communities the real results in reduction in issues associated with our children, and certainly reduction in substance misuse, and just better life trajectory for our kids. Isn't that what we all want?
Yes.
And I will finish by, just saying to you, Dr. Metrick, you're a retired educator that's in your heart. It just, you can't, thankfully, you are continuing, the work that you did for many years as a superintendent and following up on this. It's very difficult with limited resources in our schools to have an effort like Kutztown Strong and make sure that it is indeed strong and able to function, not just in name only. Yeah. That's a tribute to you. Oh. And to others, the volunteers and the staff associated with Kutztown Strong. But I've got to say, I greatly admire the work that you've done. Happy to get behind it. I know District Attorney John Adams was too. Couldn't find a better use for the money that he has that's seized from drug dealers. So makes a lot of sense, and I wish you continued success. Well, I'll be in touch.
Well, thank you. We could not have done any of this without you and District Attorney John Adams, but your whole staff's effort in helping us, as Tim Mulligan said, from Communities and Schools, it wasn't just the 11th hour, it was the 11th hour and 59 minutes, and you pulled this through for us, and it means so much because when you retire from education, you don't stop caring about the kids. Education truly is a passion, and it does continue. It's not something you turn off, and it's people like you who have allowed us to continue this effort. So thank you, and hopefully all of this comes to fruition and all of our students and families benefit. So thank you.
You bet, you bet. Thanks again, for continuing the conversation with me, Kathy, and I'll thank everybody for watching this, and if you have any questions to follow up, Kutztown Strong, is there a website they can go to, Kathy?
Yes, kutztownstrong.org. There's a lot of information there, contact information, board members, and so forth. Yes, always available, always interested in hearing new voices.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.